So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share my screen. You may have seen my note into the chat as I was welcoming each of you, but for those who just joined and have not had a chance to really review all of the communication in the chat, today's IC VodCast is going to be a little different from what you may anticipate if you are one that returns to this VodCast community week after week. And what I mean by different is that our guest co-host is actually had a conflict today. So she's not going to be here live, but we met up and we pre-recorded today's IC. And so what I'm going to do is play that for you. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about this topic of race trauma in the workplace and what we can do about it and how we can heal. My guest co-host is Minda Harts. And so I am going to now share my screen so that I can share with you that recording, and then we're going to talk about it. Feel free to use the chat today for community. That's our way of staying close to each other and extending the sense of community today. Hello and welcome to Intentional Conversations, a virtual community podcast. I am so excited to have each of you here. This is a special IC podcast because it is pre-recorded. I am Dr. Nika White. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm so excited to welcome each of you and even more excited to momentarily jump into conversations with our special guest co-host. But before doing so, I want to give you a little bit of information about what you have to look forward to in future weeks to come with the IC VodCast. Starting with next Friday. Next Friday, I'm so super excited because on October 8th, we will be welcoming Cindy Thomas George, and I look forward to that conversation. We'll be here from 11 a.m. to 12 Eastern Standard Time. And so as usual, you can go ahead and register in advance. And then the week following, we will be right back here with another very special guest that I'm super excited to welcome, Mary Frances Winters. And that is going to be a rich conversation, as each Friday is. And so I hope that you will meet us here and join us for an intentional conversation that we know is going to be very enlightening. Now, it does me great pleasure to introduce an opportunity that I have been so excited about since the moment I heard that we were going to be privileged enough to host this wonderful person for our fall book club. And that is none other than Minda Harts. Yes, she is not only our special guest co-host today, but she also is going to be entering into some sessions that are upcoming in November, where we're going to be unpacking her latest book, Right Within: How to Heal from Racial Trauma in the Workplace. There's going to be 2 separate sessions that are offered on November 2nd and November 9th. And you may register for both, or you may decide you only want to attend one. The difference is that one is going to be geared towards women of color or allies of women of color, and the other is going to be geared towards managers, people leaders who are trying to mentor, sponsor, coach, and provide opportunities for success for women of color. And so we hope that you will consider this opportunity, that you will share it with others, and join us for the Fall Book Club. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But if we go to the next slide, what I want to do at this time, which is what we always do at Intentional Conversations VodCast, is I want to give an official and formal introduction of my special guest host, my friend, someone that I admire greatly, that's doing wonderful work in terms of impacting the conversations that is changing people's lives as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so let's take a moment for us to reacquaint ourselves, for many of us, with Minda Harts. So here is her bio. In Right Within, Minda Harts gets vulnerable and asks her readers to do so as well, reflecting on racialized traumas in the workplace before offering concrete tools for healing. A pastor's kid raised in the Christian church, she consults leaders of different faiths as well as therapists because, as Reverend Yolanda M. Norton says, God can heal you on a couch too. Each chapter includes personal stories, questions for self-reflection, concrete steps that employees and managers can take toward equity in the workplace. As Harts writes, the burden shouldn't be ours to carry, but we can help each other tell the truth, validate our experiences, and let go of what we can. We can give ourselves space to reaffirm our value, first to ourselves and then to everyone in the boardroom. We need to breathe easier so we can take our rightful place at the table. We deserve to be right within. I love that. Minda Harts is the CEO of the Memo LLC, which is also the title of her previous book, a career development platform for women of color, a professor of public service at NYU, and the author of The Memo. She has been featured on MSNBC's Morning Joe and Fast Company and speaks to Fortune 500 companies, including Microsoft, Levi's, and Google, many, many others. In 2020, she was named a LinkedIn top voice, and in 2018, she was named one of 25 emerging innovators by American Express. She hosts the podcast Secure the Seat, and I'm so excited she is back with us today. Minda, how are you?
Dr. White, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your platform with me. I'm happy to be back.
No, well, we're so glad to have you back, and we don't take it lightly at all that you reached out and said yes to our invitation, and not only said yes to our invitation, but reached out and said, hey, I'm doing one official book club for Right Within, and I want to do it with you. That was a moment that I will cherish, and so I just want to tell you how much I really appreciate that. Thank you for entrusting NWC with such an important task of helping the community at large to learn more about why this book is so important to individuals, to organizations, and the impact that it's going to have. So we always like to start out, and you may recall this from before when you joined us for Intentional Conversations VodCast, that while we take the time to really share your accolades, information about your credentials through your formal introduction and bio, we always like to take a moment to have our guests to introduce themselves in their own way. What do we maybe not know about Minda that we can't find in her bio that you want to share with this audience?
Yeah, well, thank you. So I would say, thank you for the wonderful bio, but what people probably don't know a lot about is that you can see it behind me, but I collect vintage typewriters. I wish I could put that in my bio, Dr.
I think you can, go for it.
But, when you think about like ways in which we have the work, but then there's time for self-care, and I like to go antiquing and looking for vintage typewriters. So that's one intersection that I sit at. And then also I am a dog mom to Boston. And so excited to be here with you all in that way. But I think and I'm an introvert. A lot of people might be surprised to know that.
I feel like I know Boston because we follow each other and support each other on social media and such. And so I'm always seeing Boston. I'm like, Boston is living the life.
Yes. I always say that I'm going to come back in my next life as Boston because he has a pretty good life.
Boston is living the life. And I will tell you, I don't think that Boston skips a meal, does he? He's like just plump and just the cutest thing ever.
He's eating good. He's eating good.
He's eating good. Okay, so I want to jump right in because I realized that it's been quite some time since we've really acquainted our audience with your first book. We had a book club. We brought you on for the VodCast, and the book club was so rich. And then you followed that one up with another one called Right Within. So I don't want to give too much away, but I certainly want to just inquire about, when did you know that you needed to release this next book? When did that story and that narrative and the content that found its way into the book really enter into your vision as, yes, I need to get this out into a published work for others to be able to benefit as well?
Yeah, it's really funny, Dr. White. I really had no intentions on writing any books after the memo. Like
Really?
the introvert in me is like, I'm fine here. I don't want to put myself out there anymore type of feeling. Let me do the work, quietly here. But what I realized was when I was on book tour physically and then in a virtual setting, that there was one common theme that I kept kind of meeting with other women, either via email or whatever have you. And it was this pain that's still there, right? We remember those experiences, whether they happened 20 years ago or 5 minutes ago, those racial slights, those macroaggressions, they hurt, right? And even as I continuously tell my story, there's pieces of the story that I thought I had gotten over, right? That I had healed from, but I realized actually it's still a pain point for me too. And I started to think about, what would it look like if we actually were able to be free in the workplace like some of our colleagues are? And in order to do that, we have to address the pain, right? We have to call a thing a thing. And most of us have not been we have not given ourselves permission due to, you know, our either socioeconomics or our working environments to be able to tell the truth in the ways that we need to about how this trauma has affected us and how it shows up in our bodies and in our lives. And so I thought, you know what, like Lauryn Hill said, how you gonna win if you ain't right within?
Yes, there you go. I knew the lyrics were gonna come at some point.
and that's where I was like, I have to write this book. Like, this is a very important topic, just like any other workplace discrimination.
Yeah. So what would you say is, you know, different? Because obviously there's some similarities to the memo in terms of really focusing on women of color and their experiences. But what would you maybe identify as the 1 to 2 distinctions between this book and your first one?
Yeah, I would actually say that Right Within is the big sister to the memo. So if you think about like trilogies, if you will, this is the next piece of that puzzle, because once you realize that, yes, you do belong in these rooms, but maybe these aren't, some of the rooms you're in don't deserve to have you. How do you deal with seeing yourself in the ways that you need to see yourself, right? Because when we say bring your authentic self to work, what the workplace has been telling us is no, bring the versions of yourself that the dominant culture is comfortable with, right?
Yes.
And so we haven't given ourselves a chance to be like, wow, you know what, actually, this hurts every time I'm in this meeting, right? I feel racially aggressed in this meeting, but I don't know if I should say anything. I don't know if I should even call it that, because I don't want to believe that it's that. But, you know, so I realized that we're digging a little bit deeper. We talked about micro and macroaggressions in the memo, but we're actually digging into the tools we need to be successful internally, so that we can fully show up and be who we need to be in the workplace. And then the next part of that puzzle is our managers. You know, in order for us to be able to thrive in the workplace, we need our leaders and our managers creating that space to uphold and normalize good behavior and not embolden us for more toxic behavior. A manager's role, in my opinion, is to eliminate obstacles, not keep compounding them for us. And so I really do drill into success is not a solo sport. We can do all the things, Dr. White, read all the books, right? But if those guardrails are not set up inside the workplace, then we're not making it better than we found it.
Absolutely, 100%. And, you know, you talked about managers, and then first you were talking about the women of color that experience this trauma in the workplace. And so as we were strategizing and thinking about how do we want to really co-create this experience, this book club experience, you were very clear that, you know what, there's really 2 different audiences. And while there could be some overlap, I want to talk to the women of color that are dealing with these things, that are navigating the complexities of these past, you know, traumatic experiences. But then I also want to make sure that I have a message for the managers of these individuals as well. And I want them to come along as partners to help really solve this in a real full circle way. And so I want to unpack that a little bit further. For those that are maybe sitting back and they're intrigued by, okay, this book club, definitely want to show up. The memo was great. I'm sure that the Right Within is going to be great as well. And they're trying to really decipher, should I go to both? Let's just talk a little bit about what the benefits are of the 2 different sessions that we're holding.
Yeah, great question. You know, first, I would say that the healing that has to happen from all of the racialized aggression that many of us have experienced, that healing is for us. So it was very important and intentional for us to have that conversation together, safe, right? So that we can just address the pain. The first step in my book is addressing the pain, right? For so long, I don't know about you, Dr. White, but I used to say, oh no, that's not racism. Oh no, that, you know, it made me feel bad, but they didn't mean any harm, right? I was making excuses for this bad behavior when I should have never been burdened to carry it in the first place. And so we need to unpack that, right? And reading Right Within may trigger some areas that we might have forgotten about and those sorts of things. And I feel like it's important to heal in community. So it was very important for us to have that dialogue. And then for the managers, you know, we can, again, do all the work we can, but if you're not aware, if you're not listening, if you're not educating yourself and then activating what you've heard and read, then you're just creating more toxicity. And if we want to create psychologically safe environments for all of our employees, but in this case, women of color, then you need to be aware of how to do that, right? And it starts with you. You got to be right with it and say, what are some behaviors I may be exhibiting in the workplace that are not helpful, right? And taking that on so that, or maybe I've been nervous to have a conversation with Jim because I know that Jim does say a lot of racialized things in our meetings. I need to take onus of that and say, hey, I commit to making sure that this is a safe team. So sometimes we just need the tools in our toolkit to do that.
Yes, and I know that as you're structuring the conversations, you're definitely being thoughtful about what are the tools that are very explicitly, related to those manager roles versus the individuals that are dealing with this and going through this directly. So I appreciate that. And this is the official book club. So for some people, they're like, well, official, what does that mean exactly? What does official mean? I remember when you said Nika and you reached out, you said, this will be the official one. I'm like, well, what does that mean exactly? I want to leverage that. And you're hearing it first here. It's official in that this is the only book club you're doing where you're going to be a part of the conversation and present and live for Right Within. And again, I'm just so honored to be able, as I hear myself state those words, I'm just so honored. And so you don't want to miss this. It's not often that people are able to have these really useful and needed conversations in the presence of the person who really envisioned what they wanted the outcome of those words to really mean for people. And so I appreciate that. I do want to highlight that for some managers who are maybe sitting back and they're listening and they're saying, well, you know what? I haven't had anybody, a person of color, a woman of color, to express any issues or concerns with my management or leadership style. So that's probably not for me. Let me tell you, and I'm sure you can echo this, a lot of women of color, we sit with this trauma. We don't necessarily communicate it because first and foremost, we aren't believed half of the time, right? And then when we are believed, it's diminished as, well, they didn't mean it that way, or perhaps you misread it. And so that just exasperates the situation. So I am sure that you're probably of the persuasion that if that's someone's thinking right now, that, you know what, no one's complained on me, right? I don't have any grievances out there about my leadership of women of color. Show up anyway, because you're going to learn something and it's going to make you even more effective leader. Do you have something to add to that, Minda?
I echo it 100%. And I would also say that if you're sitting back saying, well, I don't actually have any women of color or people of color on my team, you need to be here even more so, because you got to get ready for when that happens. Don't be reactive, be proactive, making sure you're creating a safe space. So when that woman of color shows up, when that person who identifies differently than you, when they show up, then they feel like they belong, right? And so we can get a jump start. So it's really for everyone. So if you want to be a better manager in the 21st century and beyond, you have to have the competencies to manage diverse teams.
Absolutely. And the changing face of America is doing just that. It's changing. This is the workforce of the future. So absolutely, that's a great point. Now, you mentioned something a moment ago when you said that I think you may have used the words trigger warning. And I know that oftentimes people and practitioners in this space are really thoughtful about that, because we never know what can trigger someone. And just the nature of the book, the content of the book, some people could be sitting back thinking, I need this book, but oh my gosh, I'm going to feel so triggered and I know it. How can people prepare themselves, women of color, prepare themselves to make sure they can receive all of the goodness from the book and be able to navigate the complexity of, there's going to be moments where something's going to resonate or it's going to draw some type of connection point to maybe their direct lived experiences that are not quite pleasant. What do you say to those women who need the book, would benefit from it, but they know that it's going to be triggering for them? How can they navigate that?
Yes. Well, writing the book, I have to be honest, was triggering for myself, Dr. White. Even recording the audiobook, I had a moment where I was reading one chapter and I had to tell the engineers, like, I need a moment just to process, because you don't realize that even though you may feel that healing has taken root in your body and that you're moving forward and thriving way better than you might have in the past, those things still hurt, right? And I think that oftentimes we just haven't even given ourselves the space to say, you know what, that was messed up. And in order to do that, it feels so much better again in community. So I would say, you're not going at it alone. You don't have to heal alone. So if you are concerned about what those triggers might be, I even have a chapter on how to manage those triggers, right? One of my trigger areas are, when I was in a traditional work environment, was team meetings. That's where I was the most micro racially aggressed in team meetings. So for me, I had so much anxiety going into meetings, right? Emails were another place that was a real big trigger point for me because people were very racially aggressive in tone and seeing other people, right? So there was a point in my life where I would just get anxiety even opening up my inbox in the morning. You hearing stories like that may also remind you of those moments that you had or that you're dealing with right now. But what I will say is you deserve to heal. You deserve to thrive. And in order for us to get to your healing point, it's going to require us to do a little bit more work, but this time the work benefits us. And so just like my writing style, I also keep it light. I incorporate pop culture. So even on those moments where it gets kind of heavy, we're going to bring it back to some good lyric and make it feel better. But I offer a lot of tools. So think about your healing as a toolkit. What tools do you need when certain situations happen in the workplace so that you can grab that wrench, you can grab that hammer? We want you to have all of the tools, okay? So you don't want to miss our time together.
Get the tools. And so I love the fact that, and this was true for your first book as well. And when we've talked before, that you love lyrics, you love rap music, and you bring the lyrics almost as a way of your own healing and your own way of just processing information and dealing with the vulnerabilities of it all. Is that something that you would recommend for people in general? It's just to be thoughtful about what is that moment of joy that can help break the some of the pain that literally people are going through, that can be really, really hard. Do you recommend people find those outlets, whatever it may be?
Absolutely. And what I love about when you all get the book and you start to read it, at the end of every chapter is an area of reflection where we have kind of areas to say, hey, remember when I said this in the book? How did that make you feel? Right? So even where I'm with you on the whole journey, Dr. White's going to be with you on this journey too. And so together we get to do that. But again, I think a lot of things will come up, but I guarantee you'll be better for it. And so just like the memo, even if you've never read the memo, you still can jump into Right Within because it's a new journey, but it's one that I feel like you got to take a chance on healing. If you don't like it, you can go back to whatever state you were in before, but give it a chance.
Absolutely, give it a chance. And if it's anything like the memo, it's going to be a game changer for so many people. So I'm so super excited. What I have been really also paying attention to is the intersectional audiences that have been gravitating to your work and your message. And so I want to amplify that because, oftentimes when we hear about events or, tools and resources where there's such a focus on women of color, if you're not a part of that demographic, you tend to think this is not for me. But again, I just want to amplify that this is going to be a rich opportunity for everyone. Think about the value of allyship and just being able to recognize how can we use our sources of power and privilege to help others who are traumatized in the workplace to just reach their full potential. So I love that about your work. And what else would you like to share with this audience about the upcoming book clubs or anything about the book itself as we try to elicit some additional excitement around this wonderful opportunity to come?
Yes, listen, you don't want to miss out. Dr. White told you that we have 2 sessions. There's something for everybody. I want to read just a blurb from Kim Scott. She's a New York Times bestselling author of a book that many of you probably have read called Radical Candor. She is a white woman, and she said this about Right Within. If you want to be a better champion for your colleagues who have experienced racism at work, or a boss who creates a work environment that heals rather than re-traumatizes your employees, this is the book for you to read now. So listen, there's something for everyone in this book, okay? And so I want you all to be there to engage. These are intentional and difficult conversations, but they're worth it because we get an opportunity to make the workplace better than we found it, but we can't do that alone. It takes community, and it takes all of us being aware of what those issues are so that we can get to a solution.
That is so fantastic. I think that is such an incredible note to end on, so that we've whetted people's appetite. And now if you don't have a book already, go and get it, order it, read it, join us for the book club again, November 2nd, November 9th. You can choose both, you can choose one or the other. Just get the book in advance. We provide all of the information with the multiple resources where you can find the book, because it's wherever you like to pick up your books, right? They're just all over. But we are so appreciative, Minda, of having this opportunity to hear from you today, and to have our audience to hear a little bit more about Right Within and how they can be a part of our book club that's coming up. And so thank you for your time today. We look forward to November 2nd and November 9th. Any parting remarks?
Thank you so much. Listen, I'm excited. Thank you again, Dr. White, and to you and your team. This is going to be great. You don't want to miss it. So don't say, you know what, I'll catch the next one. This is it. Okay,
this is it.
This is it. Okay. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you all so very much.
Hello, I'm Dr. Nika White, and I'm super excited to bring to you, back by popular demand, a wonderful opportunity where the Minda Harts, the author of the memo, is joining us again for an official book club for her newly released book, Right Within. I call it official because this is the only book club that Minda is doing with this newly released book where she's going to be involved. In Right Within, this book offers strategies for women of color to speak up during racialized moments with managers and clients, to work through past triggers they may not even know still cause pain, and reframe past career disappointments as opportunities to grow into a new path. We invite you to 2 sessions in November. One session is going to be geared towards the individual, so that would be allies, women of color, and then the second session is going to be geared towards managers of women of color. Register to join us for this fall book club. You don't want to miss it with Minda Harts. Again, the official book club of Right Within. You can register simply by going to the link below and letting us know that you're joining us. You can participate in both sessions, or you can only select one. And so we hope that you will take advantage of this incredible opportunity.
Okay. So welcome, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. For those that are just joining us maybe after the start, I did share that today's Intentional Conversations VodCast is a bit different. Our guest co-host, who we just had an opportunity to hear from, was not able to join us live today because of a conflict. So we pre-recorded about a week ago, and I wanted to bring you that rich conversation. So what I'd like to do in the remaining time that we have left is just get some conversation going based upon what you've heard so far. What's coming up for you? What resonates as you think about the importance of us healing as we have encountered any type of microaggressions or discrimination and any racial trauma in the workplace? And how can we help bring others along that want to be allies and create safer environments for people of color to be able to grow and thrive and compete effectively in the marketplace? And so I want to get just some commentary going. If you don't mind, just simply unmute yourself and share and jump in. I think that we all could gain value from learning and hearing from each other. So who would like to start us off? What's resonating? And feel free to leverage the chat as well.
Hi, Nika. This is Solange. How are you?
Hi, Solange. It's so good to hear your voice. I am well. I hope you are.
Yes, I'm doing great. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful discussion. And, it was just brought back, a lot of memories. And it's so true that we hold all these different events in our minds that would happen. And it's so, when it's happening, you really, sometimes it's in a room full of people, so you don't want to say anything, right? And we put it aside, but then we don't go back and then address it. Sometimes we do, depending, how egregious the insult has been. But I think it's so important to address it no matter how long, time has passed, right? And because that's the only way we're going to heal, right? So I think addressing it with your peers or someone who has your back, right, during that time. But then I think you have to also go back to the person who actually did made that comment or said something. I think you have to address it with that person, and address with that person no matter how much long time has passed. It could be years too, and I think because it's all about healing, right? Mm-hmm. So that's my comment. I think it's so important for us to speak about it amongst ourselves, get that nurturing for others who understand because they've been through it as well. But I think also going back to that person, it could be a past boss, it could be anyone, but I think you have to go back to that person and speak your truth and speak your piece to that person. They need to know what they've done.
No, I so much about what you shared, Solange. I really appreciate, and I think there are a lot of people who may experience that type of trauma and pain, and they will just assume I'm going to separate myself. Maybe they'll leave the organization and think that that's going to provide the full healing, but it still stays with us in many regards. And so I love the acknowledgement of, even though a lot of time has passed, let's still find ways to go back and to address that and make it known the harm that was created. Because if people don't know, it's hard for them to really restore the relationship and try to repair that. And who knows, they could be continuing those same behaviors that could be creating harm for others. And so, Solange, I really appreciate your words. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So I see a number of hands raised, and I think the first one I saw was Andrea Boyles. And so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, so 2 quick comments. First, I have to be honest with you. When she said, many of you undoubtedly have experienced something, and if you think about it, it really hurts. And I sat there thinking, I'm cool. And then I thought about it, and my eyes sprinkled. It was like, wow, this was 4 years ago, and I could feel it. So reality check. The second is, what a way to whet our appetite. I am really looking forward to getting some tools as a DEI consultant, unless we help organizations, with the language to even talk about it. Sometimes people don't acknowledge it because they don't have language to express it, to talk about it. And then what to quote unquote do about it. So I'm very intrigued with learning some tools to help me both professionally, but also personally, because damn if it doesn't hurt. And it sure does slip in there, and you catch yourself thinking, ooh, that hurt. So thank you.
No, thank you so much, Andrea. Minda had an opportunity where she shared that it's not just about sharing her story, but it's also about providing tools. And so I have a copy of her book here. And at the end of each chapter, she gives these questions of reflection to give people a time to think about what they've read and then apply it to their situation. And I'm looking at, just from one of the chapters, chapter 4, some of the questions at the end to assess personally would be, what feelings or emotions are coming up for you right now? Is therapy a tool that you might consider using? Why or why not? And even a suggestion like, write a letter to yourself from the future describing how therapy has helped heal you and how you are thriving and experiencing freedom for the first time thanks to the work that you did. So I love the fact that it's practical as well. It's not just communicating that there is an issue and a big issue, but here's some things you can do to heal from it. Okay, so I think I see Alonda Williams, your hand is up, and then I'll go to Vicki.
Hi. So first I want to say, I've been in the workforce for a really long time, and it wasn't until I saw the post a couple of days ago that I realized that what I had experienced is actually trauma, because there are situations that I remember so vividly and can recount with precision from many, many years ago that I can still talk about, and it is really trauma. And I think I'm just being present in this moment of just accepting that what I've experienced and the lasting impact. I mean, I've changed my career. I've done all sorts. I've changed who I am. I received feedback from someone, over the years saying that I was, I wasn't friendly enough. I wasn't this, I wasn't that. And I got a coach and I made changes to how I showed up at work, all because of these microaggressions. I was in a meeting one time, a huge meeting with presenting something. And this was, again, you'll know how long ago it was ago when I tell you. In the middle of the meeting, this executive says to me, "So, Miss Williams, I understand that most Black people think that OJ is innocent." In the middle of a presentation. And I recount that. I mean, that's how long ago, but I just recount that as every time I do, it's like a sting. So my point is, I'm just so grateful that we're having space to talk about this, because there's a lot of harm. So I appreciate you making the space, and I look forward to reading the book.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Alonda. Let's go to Vicki and then Janice.
Thank you, Dr. White. Yes, I had been debating whether I wanted to go to one or both sessions, and now I know I want to go to both sessions. I am an ally, but I see the real need from a organizational perspective to really dig a lot deeper into this, because I can really tell how much covering is going on and how much pain is going on. And organizations may not be turning a deliberate blind eye, but if they don't see it in an exit interview, they may be interpreting it as not a problem. But clearly, that there's a possibility of a continuation of covering even as you leave a company. So this is very, very important organizationally for companies to recognize, for taking care of their employees and for retention as well. So I thank you for offering both of these sessions up, and I'm looking forward to them.
Great, thank you, Vicki. And Janice, want to extend the floor to you.
Thank you. I was on a call or a conference this week, and there was somebody that was very motivational, and they were discussing retention of staff, and during working with complex care and different populations and unhoused individuals, and how to retain staff during these challenging days. And I was quite impressed with most of her presentation. And then somebody asked, what about when you have staff that perhaps, that you have to let go? How do you do this? And she said, we just let them know that they weren't the right fit. And that just set off huge, huge flags for me. The only people I've ever known that have heard that, my friends, they're people of color. And so I just, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that, because I really want to write back and I want to comment on it. It just set me really on edge. So thank you.
Janice, I appreciate this. And I too am not a fan of those words. I think that it presents an opportunity for people to hide behind an excuse. When people say often, this person is not a good fit, fit translates into you don't act and think like me, and therefore I don't think that you belong. And I think that does a disservice to society, to the individuals that are victimized because of those words. I think what we have to do is cause people to realize that we need to shift the conversation from cultural fit to being an add, right? And I think that everyone can add something. And so I am a big fan. In fact, I will tell people, especially those who are in the HR realm, let's try to take out of our vocabulary, not a good fit. And what it does is it causes those hiring managers who are making those decisions to think more intently about what are the legitimate reasons, that this individual is not aligned with what the requirements are for the role. Because otherwise it's too easy to just take ambiguous reasons that are not justified to just say someone should no longer be a part of an organization. So I hope that helped.
And what could happen going forwards, like if that gets translated, it's just so wrong. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this is such rich discussion. I don't want to move too fast. I want to open up space for others. If you have something you'd like to share and to contribute, just related to this broad conversation of healing from racial trauma in the workplace, I want to give you an opportunity to do that now. Now I see an L. Casarin.
Yes. Hi. Is it okay if I don't put my camera on?
It's absolutely fine. Absolutely
okay,
fine.
Thank you. I'm just not very presentable this morning, but
no, you're fine. We're glad you're here.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about situations like this for people of color. I'm myself Indigenous and Mexican, and I've been with my company for 21 years. And just now, last year, actually, it started with the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion committees to move the company forward. What I'm experiencing is, it's a lot of performative stuff. It's a lot of, we're going to join this association, but just for this year because it's too expensive. So I can, buff off my resume. And as someone that has been driving this diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation, it's really hard when you hear that back from the people that you're working for. And it's been constant, whether it's migrations, whether it's we're not going to put justice on a George Floyd statement from the company because, our Republican partners don't feel comfortable with that. That has created a lot of wounds on my side. and the realization that these people may not be the people that I thought they were. And I just have a curiosity to see if you guys have any suggestions, because, you know, I talked to this with my therapist, but my therapist is white. So I think there is a limitation of understanding what we go through. And I really don't know where to turn to be honest.
I so appreciate that and appreciate your vulnerability and sharing. The immediate thing that comes to mind is I would love for you to participate into this book club and to get Minda's book. I think that you will find it to be valuable on your healing journey. I'm glad that you are aligned with a therapist. And I want you to also extend yourself some grace. You know, let's extend yourself some grace, surround yourself with a tribe of people that can love on you, that can support you, that can validate your thoughts and your feelings so that you can also heal. And I want to open the floor up to see if anyone else here, whether you place it into the chat or you unmute yourself and to share. But let's help our friend with any thoughts that come to mind that could help her as she navigates the path ahead.
I have one. What I was looking for her name again. I just wanted to know. I forgot who it is I'm speaking to exactly. Who was the person?
It's
So
me. My name is Lizette.
Okay, gotcha.
Lizette.
Okay, yeah. I understand. I can identify with where you're coming from, and I recognize why spaces like this are so necessary, as well as what you're offering for, you know, the follow-up, because people can only understand the spaces that they come from. And if the majority of our, the people we work for and maybe our therapists and whoever else, if their experience is different, they will not have some unless they learn it and take the time, do not always have an understanding about the impact of things that such as what you described. So I've recognized in my life, and in more than just in that space, my needs are so important. They need to be met, but I have to meet them where they can be met so that I can afford to go into those other spaces whole. And they speak to some of the questions, I didn't read it all about, you know, things turning to hate and all of that, because when our needs are unmet for long enough, they are damaging on more levels than we're even able to recognize at that time. So they matter. It just means I have to be strategic in how I get them met. And that would be what I recommend to you, because if not, it is a very heavy weight and it comes with a lot of consequence if it's not. But so a space like this and a space like what's being offered, and sometimes we have to create our own with people who can do that, because if not, the weight that we carry and the harm that it continues to do to us is not acceptable. So hats off, all the encouragement and support for you to be able to do that. And this is one of them. So thank you so much, Dr. White.
No, thank you. Those were great words. So I so appreciate it. And Lizette, again, I want to just acknowledge that, you know, you have a community of people here that in this moment, just because you were brave enough to share some of your vulnerabilities, we're holding that for you. I literally am putting my hands up and we're holding that for you. So thank you, Lizette. And I think we also have to be okay with recognizing and through our self-awareness, what type of emotional capacity we have to deal with circumstances. Sometimes we can get that message of, well, be resilient and just, you know, keep navigating it and it's going to get better. But we have to know what our threshold is, and we have to be willing to make decisions that are informed by what we can take. And sometimes I think that we don't necessarily get that luxury, because we are seen as, especially Black women, being resilient, just taking it all and continuing to keep going. So I wanted to express that as well. I see Andrea Payne's hand is up. So Andrea, please share with us.
Thank you so much for this platform. I'm seeing so many resonating comments in the chat this morning and even in the comments that were before. And I think one of the things that came up for me in this is, yes, I'm cool with therapy. I support therapy. But in this pandemic, with all that's going on, it's becoming harder to find therapists now. And then those that may be out of work or maybe in between work, or, you know, trying to do some consulting or whatever on their own, may not even have the means to pay, because a lot of the therapists are not even accepting insurance. Like, they want, you know, full payment. So how can we be more intentional in creating the safe spaces to support one another with all of this workplace trauma and toxicity and the gaslighting and the Karening and everything else that we endure.
Andrea, that is real, and I'm glad that you are naming it, because yes, while we can say go to a therapist, not everyone necessarily has the means, whether it's because they're in between jobs. We know that the Great Resignation is occurring right now, and we have to be able to heal. One of the things I recall from what Minda said is healing is for us, and so if it is for us, and she also mentioned that we have to heal in community, then I think that sometimes, while it's great to have a specialist from a clinician perspective that can, through all of their training, help us gravitate towards the healing process, sometimes just having that safe space of trusted people, I think, can do the same thing, especially those that are, experiencing maybe the same challenges. And I think that part of getting us comfortable with that is to be willing to be vulnerable. Sometimes we don't even want to tell our story. We don't even want people to know that we have endured something of that nature. And I think that hurts us. Which is why I really am holding space for Lizette and others in this conversation that are willing to just share, yes, I've experienced that, and it was really, really hard. And so I'm hoping that there are also some informal grassroots ways that people can create a sense of community with that level of trust and sharing, so that people can process together when it's not necessarily accessible for people to be able to have therapists. And let me say this too, if you are someone that's in a position of influence within your organization, and you can say to those influencers, hey, let's look at our EAP program. What is the makeup of the therapists that are available? Because we have people of color that are in our organization. We have people that are part of the LGBTQ community that are in our organization. And there is a lot of value in them being able to connect with therapists who understand their plight, their issues, their lived experiences. So that's what I would have to offer, but I certainly want to give space and room for anyone else that would like to add to Andrea's question. What else would you advise, if anything? Place it into the chat or feel free to raise your hand. And while maybe some folks are thinking about what perhaps you'd like to share, just in noticing the time, I want to go ahead and move to Carly, who has her hand up as well.
Hi, thank you for holding this space. I was thinking about, I think it was 2 speakers ago, was talking about the company being performative and being surprised by the reality of, people are not who they thought she was. And I'm an educator, and I could say, like, succinctly, but not, it's a longer, it's a much longer kind of explanation. But on the surface, right, we have this country that has always been divided, and people are saying, oh, this country is divided, as if it happened yesterday, but it was founded on division. And if you take a moment to look at how Texas, New York, and California control textbooks, and how every state has different history and different focus on history, and what and different teachers with different motivations and different schools with different motivations, then it's no wonder that DEI has exploded, right? Because DEI is in direct, like, relation to the fact that this is, and like, kind of very much the Tower of Babel. And so when you don't have a solid, when a country of 300 million people is not operating from the same playbook, then you have an absurd amount of interpretations of history and why things are playing out the way they're playing out now. And so I say that to say that if you know thyself and take the time to kind of pull on the strings of history and craft your understanding from research, and know that none of what's happening is like a mistake. So while I've been surprised, many people on this call have been surprised, we shouldn't be, because there was never a time when things were great for everyone. And sometimes just having enough of an understanding of history and why things are the way they are for yourself could be the salve, it could be enough to keep going, because people are amping up trying to revise history, trying to outright lie about history, and it's taking a toll. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but continue to craft construct your knowledge from a place of, like a desire to understand like how the whole thing works, and potentially define yourself within that, within that space. And sometimes that can be a little bit scary to find yourself in a place. When you do enough history, you're going to find examples of yourself where it's like, oh, I was doing that. I was promoting that. I was perpetuating that. And that's probably the scariest part of why everyone's operating from their own set of beliefs and facts and understanding.
Holly, that is so good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those contributions.
Sure.
I want to go back. Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to Andrea just to make sure you're paying attention to the chat. There's some good resources that are being placed out there, and just some also affirmations in support of you. So I want to make sure that you're taking a look at that. We're getting close to the top of the hour, and I will have to cut our conversation about 2 or 3 minutes short before the top of the hour, because I do have a hard break for another session that I'm doing right at the top of the hour. But I hope that this has been fruitful. I hope that it has encouraged you to think about the upcoming book club as an opportunity, whether it's for you or someone else maybe that's in your inner circle that you feel like would gain value from tips for how to heal from racial trauma. And also for those individuals that want to stand in solidarity and to be allies and influencers of helping to shift the workplace from behaviors that can be harmful. So certainly take advantage of that. I have placed into the chat the link. Again, those dates are November 2nd and November 9th. And even if you can't attend the session, we will definitely. Somebody is not muted right now. But even if you can't actually attend the session live, if you register, you will also get the recording. So I hope that you will certainly consider that. I don't take it lightly that each of you have joined here today. So thank you so very much. And I look forward to seeing you in future weeks, including next week, where we will welcome Sindhu George. And I hope that you have a great, safe weekend. Thank you all so much. Take care.